Happy holiday and happy Easter to all our viewers around the world. It's Lunchtime Politics, where we give you all access fast to the big stories in the polity and in politics. Let's begin with the headlines. Head of the Roman Catholic Church and sovereign of the Vatican City State, Pope Francis, dies on Easter Monday at 88, a day after appearing in St. Peter's Square. We wish happy Easter to thousands of worshippers. Death toll from the suspected headers attack in Okum and local government areas of Benue State rises to 72 persons as security forces making routes to affected communities following spate of incidents. And former presidential aspirant and fiery preacher, Pastor Tunde Bakare, asked the president to stop playing God as he criticizes and also commends action of President Bola Tinubu, who is scheduled to return to Abuja today after his 2 weeks working visit to France. Thanks again for joining us on the program. I'm Jeffrey Uzonga. Happy holidays one more time. But this particular holiday on Easter Monday took a rather somber turn with the announcement of the death of the head of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Francis, by the Vatican at the age of 88. According to the Holy See, the Catholic pontiff died this morning at 7:35 a.m. The Pope had been undergoing treatment for an infection for about 5 weeks, and earlier reports had speculated he was on the road to recovery, even appearing before thousands of worshippers at St. Peter's Square just yesterday, Easter Sunday. Pope Francis was born in Buenos Aires of Italian parents who had emigrated to Italy from Italy to Argentina. He rose through the ranks of the Catholic Church to become the pontiff in 2013. Our thoughts with the Catholic families around the world. And staying with the big stories in Nigeria, back in Nigeria right now, the 7th overseer of the Citadel Global Community Church, Pastor Tunde Bakare, has delivered what can be addressed or referred to as fiery address that doubles as a State of the Nation statement. During the address at his church in Lagos, Pastor Bakare asserted that the current administration is steering the polity adrift. He advised President Bola Tinubu to adopt a more humble approach to governance. The former presidential aspirant of the All Progressives Congress, Pastor Tunde Bakare, decried the relationship between the executive and legislative arms of government under President Bola Tinubu, alleging that the legislative arm of government is now an extension of the executive, while commending some efforts and preparing solutions to the challenges of the country.
This National Assembly, the 10th, has by its unconstitutional endorsement of the president's abuse of powers proven to be the most spineless in our recent history. Through its actions and inactions, the National Assembly has in effect become the 48th member of the president's cabinet. While a cabinet minister has more or less become a third-time state governor in Rivers State, pampered by the indulgences of the president. Recent events have made it clear to Nigerians that had this assembly been in place in 2006, when the third-term agenda was proposed, our democracy would have since morphed into one of Africa's lamentable tales of sit-tight dictatorship. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, under whose brand of politics the institution of legislative oversight is collapsing, and our democracy is faced with an existential threat. I say, Mr. President, Nigeria is too delicate for this kind of politics. If this state capture was what you meant by a Milokan, it is an anticlimax that can only be counterproductive at the end. I urge you, Mr. President, to think deeply and reflect on these words. No man is wise enough, nor good enough, to be trusted with unlimited power. Mr. President, please stop playing God.
All right, those are the words of Pastor Tunde Bakare. Let's also tell you some of the things that had happened during the Easter celebrations across Pentecostal churches led by worship, significant, dominated by music in that sense, and messages of remembrance of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The National Superintendent of the Kingsway International Church in Maryland, Pastor Femi Fasheru, declares that as just the stone put over the tomb couldn't hold Jesus back in the grave, Nigeria can also roll away stones of impediment, impossibility, and imprisonment of all sorts.
The lyrics of the songs, every layer, fabric, and congregational expression across diverse worship centers on this day is a representation of Easter celebrations. Whether in the solemn submission, or joyful noise of singing and dancing, Jesus' victory over death, as recorded, resonates as a fundamental touch point for Christians. The Covenant Nation Lekki is hosting Senior Pastor Pojo Yemade as he brings an endearing perspective of the cross, themed 4 Steps of God's Wisdom for Your Situation, taking its illustration from the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus.
Jesus, for the joy that was before him, went through the cross. As he was going through the cross, the meditation of his heart was on his high priestly ministry at the right hand of the Father. The hope there is a confession of your hope. If Jesus wasn't crucified, Jesus will never have experienced resurrection. Crucifixion was part of the will of God for Jesus. Do you understand what I'm saying? You experiencing that from the hands of men is part of the will of God for your life.
And some more celebrations laced with proclamations.
Do you know that I know everything troubling you has been crucified to the cross? And they will never come back again. Happy resurrection.
It's a day of diverse ministrations of all types for the reason of the season.
Christ, who is our Lord and our God, died for us. So, situation or condition should not make us change from being a Christian to something else.
Over at the KICC National Headquarters, congregants turned up in their numbers, gaily dressed to experience and join in the celebration of the season. It's yet another dimension of the events of the death and resurrection of Jesus, as Pastor Fasheru, anchoring majorly on the stones placed across the tomb, speaks of how that represents, in part, impossibilities, imprisonments, and impediments, as it delivers a hope-rising message.
Stones in the Bible could symbolize heavy weight to keep what was buried. No more hiding. Roll away the stone. Have you been blessed this morning?
Truly, Easter is one of the most significant events that unites the Christian faith community. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
So that's a panoramic view of how Easter was celebrated across the Pentecostal sector. But let's tell you about some security development in Benue State, where one of the survivors from the coordinated attack on Ukum and Logo local government areas by suspected herders has died at the hospital as a result of injuries sustained from the attack, and 12 more bodies have now been recovered, bringing the casualty figures to 72. Governor Isaac Eliyahu confirmed the development in a telephone conversation with our correspondent in Benue. Says security forces are making inroads to the affected communities. Worried by the rising number of persons killed, the governor restated the need for the federal government to urgently step up security surveillance in Benue to prevent the scale of attacks and simultaneous killings across the state. He appeals for information sharing on intelligence that can help prevent attacks on the people, as security agencies may need cooperation from the communities to respond to threats. Last week, Tuesday, suspected herders attacked Otobi in Otukpo, local government area, killing 11 persons, among other incidents in the area. I seen visuals of the church on the plateau. That's how they describe themselves, under the leadership of the Church Denominational Leaders Forum and Christian Association of Nigeria, Plateau State chapter. They are embarking on a peace walk as a mark of honor for the dead and a cry for justice. The walk is a way of protest against continuous killings in the state and country in general, with a particular reference to those killed in Rui, Eti, and Zike communities of Bokos and Basa local government areas of the state. And that's why we're talking security on Easter Monday, because of the spate of attacks. It looks like it's not abating. In fact, some part of 2024, there was some level of, not as if there were no security incidents, but this looks like something that's literally just exploded and is not relenting or abating just anytime soon, especially in Benue and Plateau. And we have a security consultant and the CEO of Beacon Consulting and Intelligence Limited, Mr. Kabura Adamu, to bring us up to speed and help us understand what exactly is going on. Mr. Adamu, thank you so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure, Jeffrey. Happy Easter. And let me commiserate with you about the death of the Pope.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this incident. It looks like this has defied resolution. I don't want to say it has defied might of state. What is your interpretation of what is going on? Because as I said last year, some part of last year, there was some level of improvement. But it looks like all hell just broke loose now. And this is just brazen, unstoppable, literally reckless in Benue and Plateau.
And at the Katsina, at Zamfara, to that, to an extent, some parts of Niger State, some parts of Kaduna State. It's, yes, the incidents in Plateau and Benue are being highlighted, but these other states that I mentioned are also going through the same thing. In Zamfara, a community is having to pay levies to one of the bandit groups just for them not to be attacked. This is sadly the situation in the country at the moment. And what are the reasons? The fabric for security that we have in the country has significantly collapsed. In the urban centers, there is a reasonable security presence, but as you move into the rural areas, the security infrastructure is so thin that non-state armed groups are exploiting that thinness. And in very simple terms, they are challenging the authority of the state. And sadly, they are doing so successfully. They have realized that picking up arms is one of the easiest ways for them to get whatever it is that they want. And so sadly, criminality, armed criminality, has now become a major component through which these non-state armed groups are challenging the supremacy of the use of force by the state in almost all locations. The second element is the collapse of our social fabric. Social cohesion in Nigeria has reached a very low level where communities don't coexist, most communities. And so ethnic militias of different sorts have emerged, and you see them armed, you see them also challenging the supremacy of the use of force, and of course, in the process, committing all acts of criminality. Then the third, and I think the most important point, is the inability of the state to sanction erring security personnel. Consistently, your station, you cover these incidents. Let's use Plateau State as an example. For over 2 weeks now, serial incidents have occurred in Plateau State. But I don't think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, have you ever reported that one security personnel has been held accountable for those acts? I doubt. And of course, I'm not aware. I cover this thing, but I haven't heard that. So in such a situation where no one is held accountable, unfortunately, you see the continuation of these challenges.
So Damo, in addition to that list, having spoken with the Speaker of the Plateau State House of Assembly, I've spoken to a member of the Benue State House of Assembly, we've spoken to the governor, we've spoken to focal persons. Besides the criminal element, they are very emphatic, saying this is about militia headers. They mentioned Fulani and all of this, said this is about annihilation, it's about land grabbing. They were not mincing words. Isn't that
I don't doubt
brutal? Even that to be brutal. I want you to also respond to that element as well. Because sometimes when you speak to them on this, they're like, yes, all of these elements are part of it, but this is at the heart of it. What do you think about it?
I don't doubt their statements. They believe that that's the cause, but I am saying that it is not a one cause situation type of scenario. There are multiple issues at play that are leading to circumstances. And I would also urge you, they don't want to hear this, but the truth is that what you have in the plateau is an identity-based conflict. There are 3 distinct groups on the plateau, and each of these 3 distinct groups is trying to project an interest. So in the spirit of fairness, I think the media too should try to get the side of the 2 other groups. On the one, you have the indigenous group, and this, you've just represented their statement. I think it's also fair to go to the settler group, get their views and air it. And then there is a criminal group that consists of these 2 sides, the settler group and the indigenous group. They've come together as criminals. On one instance, they will go to the indigenous group, commit acts of criminality. The indigenous group will think it's the harder group, and then they will attack the harder group. On another instance, they will go to the harder group, commit acts of criminality, and then the harder group would think it's the indigenous, and then they will attack them. So unless and until the law enforcement component identifies this criminal act, for God's sake, Jeffrey, witnesses have indicated that these people came on motorbikes. Motorbikes, you can't put motorbikes in your pocket. Today, get 10 young GIS practitioners who have expertise in GIS and put them in a room and just give them some small amount of money with data. They can use the heat from those motorbikes to tell you where they came from and where they returned to. So why aren't we doing that? Irrespective of whatever reason are being projected, let's go after the perpetrators, arrest them, debrief them, prosecute them, and then tell me if the real reasons will not come out. Irrespective of whether it is land grabbing or not, there are criminals at play who are killing people wantonly. We must call on the state to arrest those criminals and prosecute them. If we sit and continue giving reasons for why it's happening without going after the criminals, then sadly, what we have at the moment will continue to take place. My point is, let's go after the criminals, irrespective of their identity, irrespective of whatever it is that they represent. Arrest them, prosecute them, and we can't have a situation where the state cannot go after the criminals. They came on motorbikes, they are armed. It's very easy. I don't want to say too much, but I'm just giving you an example. There is enough technology to retrace what happened through using forensic investigation and identify everything that has happened. If we don't have the capability, let's go to the private security sector. That capability exists. We can do it. Why we're not doing it is what I don't know. The second point I want to make is, why is the Plateau State government not titling the land if it believes it's about land grabbing? Go ahead and title that land, and in the process make money from it and reduce the tendency for land grabbing. If the issue has been mentioned severally that it's about land grabbing, then solve the problem and just title the land.
So I totally agree with you on this part, that the president is the commander-in-chief. So I doubt whether the might of state is not there. We have the weaponry, we have the technology. I want to presume we do. So why is there a failure? Who should the president be holding responsible in this? And he is the commander-in-chief. So if he says secure these people, we are losing lives carelessly, and that is not being done, who should we be calling for his head or her head to roll? Because it looks like there's a will problem here, not a might problem.
And maybe even capacity problem. Jeffrey, I'm being, honest with you. Perhaps there is a capacity problem here. We're not asking for a reinvention of the wheel. We're asking for simple security practices. Security demands that you stop criminality. And that's what Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution says. So when you ask, I don't want to use the word heads should rule. I don't want anyone head to rule, but we should hold our security sector accountable. And, we're in a democracy. The executive arm of government should have an internal mechanism for holding security sector accountable. So in this instance, there is the element of public security. Now, there are different components of the security sector that are responsible for public security, starting from the Nigerian police force to the civil defense, and then, of course, to the military. There is an operation Safe Haven currently ongoing in the Plateau State. It's been running for 15 years. So perhaps the military hierarchy should ask in a query manner, in clear terms, from the leader of that operation, what went wrong? Why did he allow that failure to happen? And then the Inspector General of Police should also ask, where these two fail to do that, they report to certain ministers. In the case of the defense, Minister of Defense, he should now query the hierarchy and ask critical questions. And then, of course, in the case of the MPF, they report to the Minister of Police Affairs. The minister should also take that action. Now, where the executive arm of government fails to carry out this level of accountability, our democracy allows the legislature to conduct oversight function on them. So this failure kind of cuts across different levels. The legislature, even though they are in recess, I believe this matter warrants some level of action. There are committees and there are chairmen, and then of course there are principal officers within the legislature. They should query the executive arm of government and ask critical questions. Otherwise, this monster that we're allowing to propagate can swallow us, Jeffrey. I say this with all sense of responsibility. It is a monster that is eating at the very fabric of what we stand as a country.
All right, Mr. Adam, as we begin to wind down, I do not doubt what you said. If we're not careful, this is going to be something else. And that's why we're having this conversation, for everybody to be on the alert and also for the government to act. I know you had written something about public safety, how to reclaim all the local government in your LinkedIn. But in tying to that, in just about 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes, if you can respond, the Section 33 of the Constitution gives us a right to life. Section 14 gives the government the primary responsibility of protecting lives and property and also welfare. But if there is failure to uphold Section 33, as enshrined in Section 14, isn't it time for us to allow people to protect themselves? I cannot be sleeping and somebody comes to slaughter me. That's not going to happen.
So if we do that, it's an open pathway to anarchy. It will go back to that Hobbesian state of existence where the strongest, animal, as it were, rules. And the danger of that is that you will now see a cycle of violence. In one instance, it will be, remember I started by saying this is an identity conflict. So what it means is that if this identity is armed, it will go after the other identity. Now that other identity is not going to fold its arms, it's also going to arm itself. So it constantly you would see, attacks, over counterattacks, reprisal attacks, and until we reach the theory of balance of terror. And by the time we reach that theory of balance of terror, Jeffrey, millions of people may have died. So I'm not advocating for that. Vigilantism of the type that is being advocated in terms of self-defense is a recipe for anarchy. Instead, let us hold our security sector accountable. And there are the mechanisms for doing that. I've outlined some of them. For starters, once the president is back, I am advocating with all sense of respect and responsibility for the National Security Council to sit and let that sitting come out with clear directives. And then those directives should be taken by the presidency into taskings, measurable taskings with key performance indicators, so that within 1 month, we would see the machinery of government moving in a manner that is measurable and persons will be held accountable. Okay. I must say that the military and the Office of the National Security Advisor are doing a yeoman's job. They are killing commanders of terrorist groups, but all of that needs to be brought into a holistic strategy that addresses public security. We can't have such a situation, and yet security at the rural level is thin.
Okay.
And then these groups are able to...
Mr. Damo, thank you so much for always bringing your deep insights to these issues. I saw a video of one of the places that was attacked. This is just a mud house. These are poor people. I was so distressed because these are just poor people. What exactly are you killing them for? It's so painful that we can't secure our rural areas. It's very
and this is Easter, so it's a period for all of us to pour out our hearts and, in fact, call for simple action that would protect us better.
Okay. Kabiru Adamu is the CEO of Beacon Consulting and Intelligence Limited, a security consultant. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program as always.
Thank you for having me.
All right, just before we go, let's tell you that the factional chairman of the National Youth Council of Nigeria River State Chapter, Nwisi Bani, has assured or reaffirmed the council's commitment to promoting peace across the state despite the ongoing political crisis in the state. Speaking on the sidelines of a visit to a traditional ruler in Okochiri, Chief Ateke Tom Bani assured that the youth under his leadership are committed to promoting peace and initiatives in the state. And just one more, over 45 billion naira has now been generated by the Murtala Mohammed Area Command of the Nigeria Customs Service in the first quarter of 2025. The controller of the command, Michael Awe, while speaking with journalists on the milestone reached by the command within the period under review, explains that when compared with the duties and levies collected in the corresponding period in 2024, it represents a progressive 0.6% increase. And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and company. Happy holidays and happy Easter. Thanks for watching. I'm Jeffrey Ozama. Bye-bye.